So I thought we'd just talk about the state of Britain and British politics, right? Because at the moment there's a strange tendency, and I don't know whether you've seen this, for government by Netflix special, and this, of course, was evident with the Channel 4 the Netflix documentary that Keir Starmer mistakenly called this fictional program Adolescence, which became a something of a moral panic amongst our ruling class. But also, Channel 4 recently put out a documentary about the grooming gangs, and I saw Sarah Champion retweeting this today, the Rotherham Labour MP, who was honestly one of the first people to start speaking out solidly about this, so to her credit, saying that we need various proper investigations or inquiries or something done about the grooming gangs. But this kind of is a bit of an issue, isn't it? Because, I mean, one, we know everything that happened. We've had lots of inquiries. We know why it was done. We know who it was done to. And we know the tremendously awful results that have occurred from it, and the fact that it's still going on today. So I'm not even sure what an inquiry or investigation or whatever it is they want would actually accomplish. But I'm also worried about the fact that our MPs are so dim that generally this seems to be Britain is governed by whatever the most compelling piece of TV they've watched is. What do you think about this?
Well, it's a classic textbook case of elites who already know what they want to achieve in politics and already know the kind of policies that they want to promote, trying to manufacture consent for them, and also trying to neutralize a populace that is feeling increasingly seized by righteous indignation because of what has been happening to the British people over the last 30 to 40 years, certainly since 1997. Despite endless imported horrors from endemic knife crime, industrial rape gangs, you mentioned, of course, Islamist intimidation in local and national politics, even terrorist incidents, there is always this need to try and maintain the ragged tapestry of multiculturalism as best they can, and therefore, at best, to imply that yes, we face these imported challenges, but we also face some horrible indigenous challenges that also need to be kept under wraps. And gosh, we need to make sure that so that you have this kind of phantom threat of the far right. So there's this sort of false pursuit of balance to try and make out that the problem isn't really what the problem is, and that's the best version of it. And the worst is to engage in like deliberate falsifying propaganda that effectively invents crimes where they do not exist. And so in the case of Adolescence, you actually watched it. I've not watched it, and so you actually had quite an interesting take on it. I saw on the podcast, which was quite meta, and I expect beyond the intentions of the actual creators, I should expect, namely that it is a very, in many ways, quite a powerful artistic testament to the loss of manliness in our societies, I suppose was your chief point.
And the current state of affairs as well, because since the sort of institution of the, I hate to just crassly call it the Blairite paradigm, but that's really what it is. The loss of authority in the institutions themselves as well. And so generally the quality of everything represented in Adolescence is very poor. Nobody likes the place they're in. Nobody's getting good at their jobs. And it's a cascading series of failures on every single level.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Well, I just think that this might have worked. So this attempt to manufacture consent for policies that have, well, it's not even manufacturing consent. You're trying to retroactively justify policies that have already been pursued, and potentially manufacture consent for more policies, in particular online censorship, to try and tame British public opinion. The problem today, of course, is that this isn't true of all generations, but particularly of my generation, the Zoomers, and even to some extent of millennials. People opt into their own sort of media experiences these days. We're not living in the age where there are just, say, 5 TV channels and everyone's watching the same thing, and can therefore be supplied with a uniform media diet. Like we do, to some extent, choose our own media diet, and so it isn't noticeable in a way that they did choose to put this on Netflix rather than on something like Channel 4, because Netflix is a testament, is in fact one of those companies that testifies to the way in which our media ecosystem has been disrupted. So maybe that was a clever move on their part. But I also think that people in Britain, they're not hugely knowledgeable about the exact situation in which we find ourselves. So, for example, we mentioned this on the podcast today, a good chunk, the vast majority of British people think that net immigration, or the median British voter thinks that net immigration is running at about 70,000 a year, when in fact it's north of 1 million.
Yeah.
And so they're not very well informed about the nuts and bolts and the details, and nor should they be. You're probably a little bit mental if you take too obsessive an interest in what's going on in day-to-day politics. But they do have very strong intuitions, and they are aware that whenever they do read about a stabbing, and whenever they do read about a terrorist attack, or whenever they do read about or see an instance online of third world behaviour on the streets of Britain, when they see,
or when they see it in their daily lives,
or when they see Birmingham filled to the rafters with rubbish, like they know what the true sources of social dysfunction in our society are, and it's not innocent looking 13-year-old white boys who are causing these problems. And so the attempt to try and race swap, I don't think is going to be successful. And I will make one more point as well. I forget whether it was Juvenal or Cicero who said that if you want a docile population, give them bread and circuses. I think it might have been Juvenal, actually. And this is a very clever way in which you can, rulers who are badly motivated can sap the people over whom they're ruling of the kind of civic virtue that would give them the power to resist and to say, no, we're not going to tolerate that. It makes sense for a tyrant or for a tyrannical regime to want their people to be as domesticated as possible. And to some extent, Netflix already performs this function, as does, I would argue, pornography and all the video games and Deliveroo. And it's not to attack those things necessarily, because I'm no certain person in this room who's very keen on video games.
But
it doesn't seem to have domesticated you.
No, Joe Rogan got in a lot of trouble a couple of years back by saying, well, video games are kind of a waste of time, aren't they? It's like, they're entertainment, they're relaxation.
I just want to keep the audience on side.
Yeah, well, I like video games as much as anyone else, but like, it's true they're not productive.
Well, yes, indeed. And I think that our elite political class is missed a trick here. And rather as they did with the Gamergate thing, it makes more sense given their long-term goals, and which are very unjust. But like basically, we're talking about the successful end of replacement migration being achieved. If you're trying to do that, it makes sense to keep people as docile and as domesticated as possible. And if you're then invading the very things that do that, like Netflix or gaming, with your own very brazen political messaging, it's going to have exactly the reverse effect. It's going to radicalize them. It's not, which I think is a good thing. But I don't
which is how we're here now.
Which is why we're here now. And like, certainly in your case, in your origins with the Gamergate. But I'm unaware of anyone apart from people who already agree with the objectives of the regime, who sees adolescence as anything but a very brazen case of regime propaganda. And so if anything, it's more likely to wake people up than it is to send them further to sleep, which you would imagine should be their plan. So I think they've missed a trick there.
So what's interesting is there was a natural reaction to adolescence before anyone had even actually seen it. When it was announced, people understood, oh, it's a white boy who's the stabber, is it? And so you're exactly correct. So we learned the other day that it was 150 stabbings a day in Britain, which I just was not the case when I was young. When I was your age, this just did not happen. But what I find interesting is you say, this is a conscious effort by the regime, narrative control and about controlling people's thoughts. You know what? I have trouble believing it. I think they might actually be captured by their own emotions, because I think I agree completely with your characterization that the Blairite multiculti internationalist project is fraying at the edges, and it's fraying in the middle. In fact, the very center of it is coming apart. And I think that the people in Parliament at the moment are overwhelmingly committed to the paradigm. They are either themselves DEI hires, they were on short lists in both Conservative and Labour, and have worked their way up through the system by parroting the system's own sayings and phrases and morality. And so I think the fact that it's clear that there's something else coming out from under it is frightening to them. And I also think they're a bit thick. I can't help but notice that, with Jacob Rees-Mogg gone, it's hard to think of a particularly bright politician. Even like Nigel Farage is smart enough, but I don't think he's conceptually advanced enough to establish this kind of like meta understanding of the current state of the country, right? I think he's still very much trapped in the institutions are failing, quality of life is going down, therefore we just need to improve the institutions to restore the quality of life. It's like, no, there's something much broader going on here, and we need to be able to really tangle with this. And I just don't think our politicians have got that kind of capacity. And so I think that actually when something like adolescence is thrown at their feet, I think a lot of them are kind of genuinely taken in by it, genuinely taken, oh, here's a way we can get the point across that we've got to stop young boys from watching Andrew Tate, or else the entire thing goes down. It's like, look, Andrew Tate isn't the hinge upon which the entire multicultural project revolves, actually. There are way worse problems than Andrew Tate. And so I think it's actually kind of a desperation that they're latching onto this thing. And because I think they can feel the sand slowly slipping through their fingers.
Yes, I expect that a great many of them are taken in by the propaganda more than they are manufacturing their own propaganda, more than they see themselves as cynically manufacturing it. And I think that there, as in most cases, most processes that go on in the world, there's very rarely a kind of single guiding intelligence. Which isn't to say that conspiracies don't happen. When people say you're conspiracy mongering, this is a very foolish
only where appropriate.
There's a foolish way of thinking. I mean, Julius Caesar was killed by a conspiracy, so conspiracies do exist.
Why has Fauci been pardoned retroactively back to 2014? Sorry, I don't believe they don't exist.
Exactly,
just wherever it's appropriate.
And this sort of that's exactly the point. But even when they do exist, often they are the result of a congruence of interests coming together. Not every single person involved necessarily has the same motivation. So
or even knows it's a conspiracy.
Or even knows that there's a conspiracy. So I suspect there are quite a lot of people, maybe even the creators themselves, but certainly I would imagine the actors who are unlikely to be very bright, who are not likely to be very bright in adolescence, and indeed the politicians who've been taken in by it and have been like having these sorts of like theatrical seminars in Whitehall about how can we fight this fictional problem.
Nadia Whittam stands up and
exactly.
opines on it. It's like, okay.
Exactly. And you know, people, and I don't much care for Kemi Badenoch, but people trying to rake her over the coals for not having watched it, which is just absurd. And frankly, I think she's handled herself very well when she's been pressed on those sorts of things. But yes, it will be a congruence of interest. But I do suspect that, and I can't prove this, but there must have been people involved some way along the line in the process who are well aware of what crime rates in Britain really are like, and who are well aware of what like disaggregating crime according to ethnicity and race and religion will yield in terms of statistical demographic results, who nevertheless decided that it would be more politically correct and it would be to basically pin many of these imported problems on innocent young members of the host population, like people like me, like people like my younger brothers. I think it is like a grotesque instance of race swapping, and I think that many of the people involved would have known exactly what they were doing, even if Nadia Whittam isn't up to scratch on it.
See, I'm genuinely worried at this point that, and loath as I am to hoist myself in my own petard here, but I mean, did you watch Chernobyl? Right. So in that they do a very good job of representing the kind of communist mindset of it's not even that they know something's wrong, but they don't necessarily know the exact details of what's wrong. But because for political reasons and reasons of ideology, they don't look into it all that hard, right? And so when it finally gets to the point where the guy's like, well, look, the nuclear power plant's exploding, there's graphite on the roof. The other guy just says, there's no graphite on the roof because logically, according to the ideology, there's not. I'm not sure that our politically correct establishment have looked sufficiently at the statistics and the people involved in creating adolescence. I'm not sure they do know. And it's not that, I mean, I think to them, this is a kind of part of their mind that they have to kill off. Say, well, no, that would be far right. So I can't look into that, let alone, you know, I mean, I think they'll just look at the aggregated statistics and say, knife crime's 150 a day. Well, I'm not going to break that down by ethnicity. And so for them, it might, and I'm not saying this is true. Like I say, I can't prove this either.
Yeah.
But I genuinely worry that we're being guided by people who are too afraid to look at the details and are genuinely not all that bright and are ideologically captured. And so this is a real concern I have. I mean, like I said, I don't know if it's true or not.
If you would like to see the full version of this premium video, please head over to lotuseaters.com and subscribe to gain full access to all of our premium content.